Hello everyone, welcome in. In this video, we will be discussing a video made by a witness in the Alexee Trevizo case, the 10th woman, addressing some of the Baby Alex memorial videos and giving some insight into her thoughts as to Alexee's guilt and or lack of guilt in her opinion. A few things to start off this video. I will not be mentioning really anything about the medical record leaking. I've tried to and have had some more cordial conversations behind the scenes with the 10th woman, and I have told her that I am not really attempting to look into the medical records. That does not mean medical records information is not trying to find me, but that is not for this video, and that is not for me to discuss at this time. Also, this video is not to disparage or demean 10th woman. All we are simply trying to do is honor, debate, and the law around here and try to find some logic in everybody's arguments. So with that being said, this is just some counterpoints that I have thought of or seen. I've only gotten a minute or two, maybe 3 into this video, and then I was like, nah, I think I can offer a different perspective. And that is really what the whole 10th man thing is about, which is what she has named her channel, and basically the whole concept behind why she's taking an unfavorable, I would venture to say, in the public opinions stance on the Alexee Trevizo case. It follows the 10th man rule, and in the spirit of 10th manning, we can offer cordial debate. So without further ado, these are just my thoughts and opinions with her thoughts and opinions that she has presented now the day after the 1-year memorial of baby Alex being found in the trash can at Artesia General Hospital. Real quick, just a small piece of new news that has been brought to my attention, which is her press badge. This was uploaded by the 10th woman to her Google Drive. This is allegedly her press badge. We will give as much credence to it as we can until we have any reason to believe there's anything wrong with it. Does it indicate that she will indeed have press privilege when it comes to, being on the stand in the Alexee Trevizo case? I would venture to say no, because it would look like this was likely obtained after the time that the medical records were released. Just my thoughts and opinions on that, but it is new news when it comes to the Alexee Trevizo case, so I have to put it in here. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
So yesterday marks the 1-year anniversary of the passing of baby Alex Fierro. Alex Fierro is the child of Alexee Trevizo. Now, a lot of people have been asking me why I didn't make a video yesterday and kind of where I stood and if I was going to do some sort of like tribute video like everybody else did. And I intentionally waited until today. But why? So my reasons behind it is because unlike every other content creator out here, those who've been following me know that my views on the Alexee Trevizo case are completely opposite everybody else's views. So I sat back yesterday and just kind of watched everybody do their Alexee Trevizo's guilty videos. And now today I'm going to do this video, which is again from the completely opposite view of this entire case. So as you guys know, in January 27th, 2023, Alexee Trevizo went to the hospital because she was having some pains and did not know what was going on. The hospital had done a pregnancy test. They gave her a bunch of different medication, morphine and a few other things for nausea, along with the fact that she had already had some weight loss medication in her system. After doing the pregnancy test, they found out that she was pregnant, and instead of going in and telling Alexee and her mother that she was pregnant, they decided to run an additional test to try to determine about how far along she was. While they were waiting for the results of that test, she was disconnected by the nurse, ran into the bathroom because she was feeling kind of like she had a poop, which we all know are usually signs of giving birth, and ended up giving birth to a child in there. While in there, according to the defense, she panicked, freaked out, and this baby, who was not alive, was placed into a garbage can. Instead of notifying anybody, she put the baby in there. And
I guess we could pause right there because, she will bring up why she believes the baby was not alive, but just to address a few things that have been said. Obviously, yes, they gave her morphine, then they gave her not only the regular pregnancy test, but then the one that checks to see how far along you are. They also asked her if there was any possibility of pregnancy, and she did say that she had her monthly period, and that was that. Is it possible to have periods while pregnant? Very unlikely, but it does happen. From all the medical things I've seen, it's more so a spotting than a regular monthly period, which most people can tell the difference of. And typically, people with actual cryptic pregnancies can still get their period, which I don't think anyone really believes because of the cheerleading photos that Alexee was having a cryptic pregnancy. That also is basically disproven because she noticed her weight gain and took account of it and took action for the weight gain, but did not ever question the reason behind the weight gain, despite working out hours and hours a day, 6 days a week for the last 9 months, according to the defense. I do believe Gary said in the wrongful death suit, she works out 5 hours a day or whatever it is, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, something like that. So it is quite suspicious to not only everyone else, I guess, because she's one of the only people other than her core followers who agree with what she says on this case, to not think that the phentermine is a direct indicator of trying to conceal weight and not ever questioning if you could be pregnant and not knowing why you're gaining weight despite working out. It doesn't add up. It reeks of guilt and concealment to most people. Also, because the phentermine was in the system, experts have said that the minuscule amount of morphine was not as deadly as compared to the maximum amount of phentermine that was found in baby Alex's system. Now, is that good for the defense in a weird, twisted way? Because did baby Alex present as stillbirth or stillborn to Alexee? Possibly, but it's more than likely because of the phentermine than the morphine or any other combination of medication that she received at the hospital. But that's just my argument. I'm just trying to do this debate style, so we'll continue.
And they found the baby about 35 minutes or so later. Now, what you're going to hear a lot out there in general social media is that this baby was born alive. Based on the autopsy, yes, the baby had passed away from entrapment. However, I've always said that the autopsy was wrong. Why? Because the autopsy never did what we call a lung float test. And that is how you determine if there was actually air ever in the lungs. If the lungs ever inflated, the lungs would have floated. But the medical examiner's office never did that. They simply determined the baby had air in his lungs through a CT scan. And on a CT scan, if you guys can look this information up yourself, the gases also show up the same color as air. There's not very much of a difference on a CT scan when it comes to an autopsy. And absent an actual lung test, there's no way to determine if the baby actually took a breath.
Now, I definitely think that that is not an accurate portrayal of how CT scans are used in autopsy and or their legal validity in the state of New Mexico specifically. Meaning, this is the legal standard in New Mexico because when you do your research about the CT scan history in the autopsies in New Mexico, you find that there is a very religious portion of New Mexico who was not agreeing to autopsies, and obviously it was denying justice in a lot of situations, but their religious beliefs and their own personal thoughts and opinions kept them from agreeing to autopsies of their own body after death and or their loved ones who they had, the right to speak over after they were dead. So they found a way to perform most of the autopsy without having to undergo a knife. So that is kind of the history. It's not trying to bamboozle anyone or pull things over on anyone or mess up autopsy, so to speak. Now, just because it's absent a lung test of the floating of the aerated lungs, that would be a very bad legal standard because everyone would get off of their murder charges if the lungs weren't floated. How can you prove I killed him at the time? Well, that's because there's typically other signs in the autopsy as to the cause of death, right? The loss of blood when someone is shot or stabbed, the swelling of the head after the brain injury, things like that. So just because they don't float the lungs in New Mexico doesn't mean they're not able to prove if someone was dead or alive. Baby Alex is a specific situation because it's the whole foundation for the case, for the defense's case, so to be specific, because if baby Alex was not alive, she's basically only going to be found guilty, in my opinion, of the very obvious tampering with evidence charge. Now, obviously, the state and or the defense can ask for lesser included charges, which means Alexee could possibly be found guilty of any other number of crimes dealing with death, like involuntary manslaughter, which if the jury was like, well, I think that, you know, she didn't know the baby was alive, but clearly the baby was alive. That would be involuntary manslaughter. She accidentally, recklessly, and negligently put what she thought was a dead baby in the bag, and it killed the baby. So there is options, technically. When it comes to specifically if baby Alex took a breath or not, there are many other indicators in the autopsy as to if baby Alex was alive at the time of birth or not, which has also been spoken about by professionals here on YouTube, MDJ, and other commentary that's made by experts on like Long Crime or Court TV or whatever. People who talk about this, who are experts in these fields, basically say this autopsy is going to hold up. I tend to lean on the experts' opinions as far as all the other indicators, minus a float test, still prove that baby Alex was alive. So hanging on, well, they didn't float the lungs, sounds like a very weak argument in court. To the jury, that's going to read as like, dang, they're desperate to prove this baby wasn't alive, right? They are desperate. Okay, we can continue.
According to the defense, their claim is that Alexee did lay the baby on the counter or wherever the sink area was and attempt to breathe life into the baby. But when nothing happened, she panicked, put the baby in the garbage can.
So that is something I've spoken about before. If you're a long-time listener, you may have heard me speak about this idea for the defense because it's been brought up before. And I said that this is a very risky, very desperate argument because you're basically relying on the hope that the jury believes that Alexee had enough care and forethought to get this baby help by self-administering CPR to this stillborn or struggling to breathe baby. That does not follow through when you say after that, the panic sets in even more, right? Because if she's already panicking, giving the baby CPR, well, if you care enough to try and save the baby, you don't just turn around and throw the baby in the trash afterwards. That sounds like, well, if we say we blew air in the lungs, that'll account for air in the lungs. That also would be contradicting their own argument of there was no air in the lungs. It doesn't show up on the CT scan. So are we trying to account for possible air in the lungs or not? Because your arguments have to be consistent. Otherwise, the jury will, please forgive me, but sniff the bullshit, right? And so that's just my thought on the whole she gave CPR to the baby thing. I think the state, granted, if we have a really great, prosecutor, they will wreck that and make that look very desperate, in my opinion. So you're saying the only thing that, so the defense is claiming the only attempt she did to save the baby's life was one that excuses away the baby's life? That's not great.
That action alone is not okay. Like, not myself, nobody agrees that what she did was even remotely okay. But see, she's not being charged for putting a baby in a garbage can. She's being charged for first-degree murder. And at this point, I don't think the state has a case.
No, I kind of can argue that legally. I don't know what has been presented specifically as the evidence in the tampering with evidence charge. I would assume that the evidence was baby Alex's body because that follows from the murder charge. Not only did you murder the baby, allegedly, the state believes, but then you tampered with evidence by hiding that body, just like a killer who kills someone and then takes their body to the woods. In this case, it was allegedly killing a baby and putting the baby in a bag and hiding it in the trash can. And then, further than that, cleaning up the room, dispelling of the placenta, allegedly, on all this stuff, right? But that's where the tampering with evidence charge comes in as well. I don't think they care about the fact that she threw away some napkins and cleaned the blood off the floor with those napkins as much as the evidence of baby Alex's body being tampered with, specifically by being hidden underneath another liner. So she is in trouble for putting a baby in the trash because she would have been charged with that whether baby Alex was found that he was dead or alive by the autopsy, probably either way. So that's just kind of my legal perspective on that. I'm open here other people who think that the tampering with evidence charge has to deal with the napkins. Like what else is the tampering with evidence charge about? What's she tampering with? The body is the most crucial form of evidence that she tampered with, allegedly, right? So she is in trouble for putting a baby in the trash.
There has been absolutely no evidence out there that says that she ever knew she was pregnant. No text messages, nobody at the school. While people said she obviously looked pregnant, there's nobody who can actually confirm that she knew she was pregnant, nor did Devin, nor did anybody in the family.
I actually think that's a better point for the state than people realize as well, because the state is going to talk about and bring up neonaticide. The state will say that this was an act of neonaticide because, at least in my opinion, this was definitely an act of neonaticide, where someone kills their child within the first 24 hours of birth, and they typically use strangulation as those means. 90% of women who commit neonaticide are under the age of 25. So just a lot of facts that the state can throw out to their experts and to throw out to Chris Sperry, Alexee's expert, to reiterate to the jury that this was an act of neonaticide and not, oopsie, I panicked, my bad. Of course, no one can prove ever definitively that someone knew they were going to murder someone. Now, do you go back and get the footage from the store where they bought the duct tape and the axe and the trash bags and the gloves? Yeah. Do you go back and you look and listen and see if it's plausible for Alexee to have known she was gaining weight and never question if she could be pregnant? I will just say this. Most girls who have sex and aren't ready for children are very scared of getting pregnant, right? You're freaked out by it. Whether you're on birth control or not, you're still scared that it's going to fail and you are not ready to be a parent and will be faced with a horrible decision that you have to make. With that thought process, maybe I'm just assuming most people are very cautious of the signs of pregnancy, but you would think someone who was actually growing a baby in their stomach, not a cryptic pregnancy, right? There are such things as cryptic pregnancies. Do you know not many of them end in neonaticide or a stillbirth, actually? You'd think that a baby who didn't grow in the uterus spot and was all up in the ribs would come out not breathing and all kinds of messed up. No, these babies come out perfectly fine. And guess what doesn't happen? Getting murdered by their mother, allegedly, right? There's plenty of videos. Maybe I'll feature some here at the end of this video. Quick little TikToks of people telling their story about their cryptic pregnancies. And you know what's featured in every single one of those videos? The live and well baby. So that just kind of reiterates the fact that most people do not realize that they're pregnant, despite a lack of certain symptoms. When other symptoms still present, they typically find out that they're pregnant. And the ones who don't find out that they're pregnant till labor typically don't harm their child. So that's just a little bit of counter evidence, in my opinion, but we can continue.
As this case moved in the public eye, we got copies of the camera footage from the hospital. We've gotten copies of the body cam footage, and of course, copies of the medical records, all which have been put out there and released. And for those who want to see any updates, you can go into my link and click on the drive, and there's a whole file there for Alexee Trevizo. Currently, the case is kind of at a standstill. It does go to trial in August of 2024, and what we are currently waiting for is any updates from the courts. Now, the attorney has filed to have certain things not be allowed in the court. I think it's like the recordings and just a lot of certain information. We are waiting for an answer from the judge to determine what's going to be allowed at trial and what's not going to be allowed at trial.
So I do think that not only, well, obviously we are waiting not just on that, but the evidence that will be allowed in trial. And then from there, I guarantee a million, bajillion, a zillion times that even though the defense doesn't want cameras in the courtroom, that argument may or may not be taken into consideration by the judge. The judge really may not give a damn. The state also probably won't give a damn. And I know that Law and Crime, Core TV, any and all local news affiliates, and literally their uncles and cousins, all of them are coming and they are going to stream this trial. They will send their own attorneys to argue for why this is important to stream, and they will make the arguments that they typically make when courts are apprehensive, but they want that streaming money. Let's just be real about it. They know that they can argue with the court and say, well, place is going to be a field day. It's going to be a packed house, and you're going to have a lot more to deal with if you don't let us stream this. So I do think that the likelihood of it being streamed will be very high. She has way more publicity and public interest than Alexee Trevizo, which was live streamed. So I do think that it's very likely. I think Team Trevizo definitely has their hopes up that it's not going to be live streamed, but we already see how this has been playing out. I think it's going to continue that way.
Now, one thing that has often come up, and I will go ahead and address, is why my name ended up on the witness list in this Alexee Trevizo case. As you guys know from watching some of my videos, when I do get involved in the case, I really do dig deep. In this case, the medical records were given to me and they were released against the wishes or knowledge of the Trevizo family and Gary Mitchell, which is their defense team. And so Gary Mitchell obviously wants to know how I got those records, where they came from, yada, yada, yada. So what does he do? He goes ahead and he puts my name on as a witness for the defense. That way, if I am ever called, their, I guess, tactic is that they could question me to find out how I got the records and why they were released. But just for clarification, I have not spoken with anybody on the Trevizo side. I have not spoken to Gary Mitchell. So at this point in time, whether my name was on there or not is completely irrelevant because I'm not being called. Nobody has reached out or any of that stuff. So
just to counter that a little bit, should they actually care to look into her, it is not time for that. The evidence isn't decided on, and so if Team Trevizo has their way with it and all the medical information is thrown out, you're really an irrelevant witness unless they are using you to further, pardon my language, but shit on Artesia General Hospital. So your only, relevance as a witness is that, Hail Mary to try and prove that people had malicious intent against Alexee from Artesia General Hospital. So yeah, that's basically that. It's once that decision on the evidence comes through, it's fair game. And because you have been mentioned, should the state want to look into it, they could easily subpoena you. They can serve subpoenas out of state quite easily in New Mexico. I looked up the process. It is not it's not far out of the realm. They're not in the time of working it through, they're not running depositions yet. They don't even know what the judge has decided on the evidence that Gary has raised issue with. So they are going to be gearing up for that hopefully very soon. And that is when you would see yourself called to, probably take part in a deposition or whatever else.
It was just a defense tactic. It was just a way to cause some sort of public stir. They got what they wanted, kind of had a lot of people questioning me, coming at me, but it is what it is. It's said and done. The records are out there. And honestly, I don't know what it did for the defense versus the prosecution. I would say having the medical records out there actually probably hurt the prosecution more than it hurt the defense. And I'll tell you why. Because in the
Before she gets too deep into that, that was just a weird statement, at least in my opinion, that it was just a defense tactic. Like, how do you know that? Number one, because the the fact that they put you on the witness list opened the state to being able to, depose you or send you interrogatories or anything of that nature. So, should they actually know anything about this, or anyone in their sphere know anything about this, it actually opens the door. It has nothing to do with the medical records being out. It has to do with lying to the court, possibly, or looking as though you're trying to pull one over on the court. And if the state can prove that, that's actually a very big deal, more so than the medical record leak itself. That's neither here nor there when it comes to, who gave them to her. If it's a defense tactic, I don't understand the tactic. I guess maybe maybe I could be educated on that. But to me, the tactic is to prove that Artesia General Hospital are bad actors, negligent, reckless, the people who would cause the stillborn birth of this woman's child when it comes to Alexee. Not, well, like, I don't even know. I guess maybe I'm just a little lost on that thought process. I don't really see why there's any benefit to putting you on the witness list and making this part of the record in the court, if unless you intended to get to the bottom of it. Otherwise, you are wasting the court's time when it comes to arguing about this, talking about this. And Gary did say at the end of the motion hearing that it's something him and the state will have to look into. Now, if they're just going to drop it and never look into it, that's kind of suspicious, because there's only a few people who could have done this. And if the state doesn't look into it, it could turn around to bite them in the butt, because what if it was someone from their side? What if it was someone from the hospital that's going to be on the witness stand and that comes out? Like, that's why it's kind of weird to say it was a defense tactic that won't come up again, because that, I think, is what was making people think it was Rosa, and then that somehow the defense is going to be like, oh, well, if we don't care and it's her privileged records, like, it'll go away. Don't look over here. We didn't do anything. I think that's kind of why some people feel as though that's, I don't know. So that's just a little bit odd to me. Like I said, I'm not investigating the medical records, but that statement seems to just stick out as far as, like, how do we know it was a defense tactic? Because it's not even time for you to be deposed yet, the judge hasn't even come back with a ruling on the evidence that is being argued about, and depending on how the judge sees the privilege in this case, as far as it goes with the medical information, it would just go to show basically how much they care about the leak of the medical records on either side. I do think both sides should care, because who knows who did it, and you don't want a snake jumping out of the weeds at trial.
medical records, we do know for a fact that Alexee was given a certain amount of medications and certain types of medication. Well, another thing about the autopsy is when they did the toxicology report, they did not test for everything. That is not how toxicology reports work. They test for certain things. So they tested for certain things. Certain things were positive, certain things were negative, but they did not test for everything that she was given in the hospital. Therefore, the toxicology reports were not even complete.
I actually can't speak to if that's true or not. I can say that if it didn't show up in baby's system, period, it's not going to be in evidence. You can maybe try and cause some doubt as to, well, they didn't have a test for this, that, or the other. That might have been because the dosage was so low, it wasn't found relevant. We actually don't know if they looked at Alexee's medical records before doing this toxicology report, or if they just ran the toxicology and found what was most prevalent in the baby system based off the typical tests that you do on a toxicology report. I still think that the toxicology report heavily favors the state, no matter what they didn't test for. Also, it found Alexee's own medication at the highest rate. Not great for Alexee, but again, that's just maybe how I see it. She says she has a different opinion and a different view, but I don't really see how you get around how much phentermine was in baby Alex's system if you're trying to say that baby Alex came out as a stillborn. I still don't believe that, but to give credit to any kind of argument for that, the phentermine would have been what did it. which I guess would be involuntary manslaughter. I don't know.
So now you have an incomplete autopsy. You have an incomplete toxicology report. The autopsy is claiming entrapment based on how the baby was found and the information that was given to them from the scene.
Yes and no. Because of other signs exhibited by baby Alex in the autopsy, they can assume that it was the bag that suffocated baby Alex based off of witness statements that baby Alex was in a bag. If baby Alex wasn't in a bag, not near any kind of plastic that could have obstructed his breathing, but still showed signs of suffocation, that actually would look worse for Alexee, because it would look like she possibly hand suffocated the baby, right? At least now she has some deniability when it comes to, well, the baby didn't appear alive when I put him in the bag. Still, it's not just because I feel like how this gets characterized is possibly like, well, they said that the baby was in the bag, so the autopsy, they just wrote that down and just went with that. It's definitely not the case. If there was signs of head trauma, that the baby's head was bashed in and then put in a bag, I think the cause of death would have been head trauma, and the baby was found in a bag. So I that's just kind of how I see that. It's definitely not just because people said the baby was in the bag. The baby showed multiple signs on the autopsy of suffocation.
That information came specifically from nurses and people that lied. And we know that they lied because...
Hold on. I had not gotten this far in this video. I saw like the first couple minutes and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to obviously make some rebuttals to this. They do not lie. That is a very, if we're going to do this debate style, that is a very harsh mischaracterization of misstatements of the facts. That's a lie has the connotations that they have willful deception, that they have a motive behind their statements. I think that they just misspeak and misremember certain things when it is months later after witnessing a traumatic event. When it comes to lying, that implies that they have to cover themselves. Now, we might be of different beliefs when it comes to like the wrongful death suit as well, because I don't think that's going to make it anywhere in court. Nowhere, nowhere, nowhere. I don't really know the point of it other than spite and anger personally, because number one, it's going nowhere. Number two, it's going to move at such a glacial speed that what's Gary going to do? He's not getting any supplemental information out of that he can use in defense. In Alexee's defense, what is he going to do? Try and push Alexee's trial out years and years, 2.5 years, something like that. They're not going to trial and getting discovery in the civil case before Alexee makes it to trial at the end of summer. That's not happening. So really, what's the point of it? I don't know. I don't see it going anywhere. But again, maybe we can disagree on that, because I don't think they're lying. Lying would implicate that they have something to hide or a story that they need to get straight, probably because, like I brought up the wrongful death suit, they're trying to cover their butt for some reason. That we can agree to disagree. A minuscule amount of morphine and I urge, 10th woman to watch MTJ's video about the amount of morphine and to listen to other experts speak about the amount of morphine, especially versus the amount of phentermine found in baby Alex's system, and see what they attest to as a possible cause of death when it comes to what the hospital actually did. It's just not there. It's just not there.
If you actually go back into my videos and you go to the very first video that I did on the Alexee Trevizo case, you will see that the CNA completely made up her story. 100%. I don't even think there's any content creator on here who will argue that point. That's the one thing that nobody can seem to understand, why she did what she did, except that she wanted to implement herself in this story somehow, but she made up her entire statement to police.
Just to make a certain point, she could have possibly, I have a video about this same exact CNA who I said I was disappointed because she gets a lot of facts wrong and does place herself in certain situations that she was not in as far as the video evidence that we have. I don't think it's enough to impeach her fully as a witness. Will it impeach those statements? Possibly. Will she look bad to the jury? I don't think she'll look worse than Alexee. Point blank, period. That's just getting real. And then on the other flip side, like when it comes to like she wanted to insert herself in this case, well, who also posted the medical records online? Like, let's get real when it comes to like she actually was part of this case. You know what I mean? And so like if she like misremembered it or thought she had a bigger part in it, like, you know, she actually was part of this. And then we have other people online inserting themselves in cases, not just 10th women, but other people seem to be kind of learning how to be okay with crossing boundaries when it comes to actual legal cases and online stuff. And so that's not a great argument for me that she wanted to make herself part of it when you've made yourself part of it on actions you definitely didn't have to take because you weren't there. So that's just another argument.
None of it was true. She claims that she heard all these things, that she knocked and talked to Alexee through the bathroom. Just, you guys have got to go back and watch my original video. I did make a playlist, but go back to the beginning and just watch exactly everything the CNA did. And that brings a lot of questions into this case. Why are the medical staff lying? Some of them, I will have to say, they didn't full out lie. They may have embellished some things. They may have added information that wasn't true, taken away information. Stories have changed, maybe as they remembered. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. But when you have certain medical staff who've completely made up an entire story, there is no giving them the benefit of the doubt. You created an entire scenario that didn't even remotely happen. And why? What was the hospital trying to hide? What were they trying to cover?
Now, I don't necessarily think she was trying to hide or cover anything because, like you said, it was more about embellishment. None of the other inconsistent statements have to do with anything that would be involving the hospital's liability, right? Like, let's be real about that. One lady who basically straight up, like, inserted herself more, knocking on the door. Now, that's not to cover her ass. Like, let's get real about that real quick. That wasn't for that. Many people went and knocked on the door. Chris, her own mom, she's the one who brought the keys, this person. So maybe she felt like she had a little bit more going on than she did a few months later. Maybe she remembered offering help. I definitely do think that she heard the toilet flushing. I think, why are we going to disagree on that? That definitely happened. So, you know, there's no reason to say she didn't hear that. But no, she didn't knock on the door. And no, I don't think I think she also said that she told Alexee, like, if you need anything, I got you. I couldn't identify when that could have been unless the CNA had some prior contact with Alexee at some point and mentioned it then and was misremembering when she told her. But as far as I was aware, Chris Sanchez removed Alexee from the IV. So I don't really know when she could have been like, let me know if you need anything. I don't think that anyone was trying to hide or cover anything up. I think that that's very conspiratorial, right? Like you have to come from a place of reality, not conspiracy. And when it comes to the reality of the situation, if anyone really was worried about their actions when they found the baby, wouldn't they have just hidden the baby again? If the hospital was like, oh shit, this was our fault, wouldn't they have just thrown the baby in the trash if they were bad actors, if they thought that they were culpable in it? Wouldn't they have thrown the baby back in the trash and thrown it out back and been like, nope, not dealing with this, not reporting this death, could look bad on us? So I just don't really follow the logic as to like what conspiracy are they hiding? The fact that they didn't tell her she was pregnant quick enough? I don't know. Like I don't know what liability they had. They just didn't. They don't, obviously they owe her a duty to take care of her when she had misrepresented the facts, possibly, but also kind of told them there was no possible way she could be pregnant, at least in her opinion. They were operating off a patient self-assessment. They can't take that at her word, so they did a pregnancy test. They found out she was pregnant. A nurse who's not qualified to tell Alexee if she was pregnant is the one who lets her go to the bathroom. Then Alexee doesn't come out and inform anyone of what has just happened. I think all of the liability then falls on Alexee, in my opinion. So therefore, I do not see why the staff would say anything really in a way to try and get out of anything. Also, if that was the case, they would all have been lawyered up and not spoken with the police, right? Like if the hospital law team was like, hey, we messed up, you know, they'd be like, shut up, don't talk. So just a little bit of inconsistencies, in my opinion, when it comes to the thought process of like, well, the hospital lied or they had something to hide. Like what? When they found the baby, they called the cops. If they thought they were in trouble, wouldn't they have hid the baby again?
There is also a pending lawsuit against the hospital for wrongful death. So that's going to be interesting how that plays out. At this point, that case is on hold while we wait for malpractice insurance or a malpractice hearing on the doctor to determine how or when they can proceed with the lawsuit. And again, we are waiting for some answers from the judge to see what is going to be allowed in the trial and what is not. It's going to be a very lengthy, they're looking at 6 weeks, and there's going to be a lot of questionnaires. There's going to be a lot of backup jurors. So as this progresses, I will keep you guys up to date. So let me just end with the answer to the question that everybody's going to ask. Do I think Alexee Trevizo is guilty? Of first-degree murder, absolutely not, and I do not think they're going to get that conviction. Do I think she is guilty of improper disposal of a corpse? I do believe putting her baby in a garbage can was wrong. I believe she is guilty for that. I believe that is the crime that she should pay for. That is the charge that she should be charged with. She is not being charged with that. She's being charged with first degree. And no, I do not believe that she intentionally or even unintentionally went in there and ended the life of her child. I do not believe that she put a live baby in that garbage can. That is maybe where I differ from most people on the internet, but I guess we're going to find out all the information at trial. So stay tuned, follow along. I will keep you guys up to date as more things progress, and definitely we will be following this trial live.
I do think it is a little interesting for her to say that she'll be watching it live or covering it live, mainly because as a witness in a case, you are usually not allowed to watch the case. So unless you are formally not a witness anymore in the case and everyone has decided to not retain you as a possible witness, you're usually not allowed to watch others' testimony and hear others' testimony. So the likelihood that she remains a witness on the case is still pretty high. So the ability to actually stream or watch or comment on this case really does hinge on if she's even part of this case at all when it comes to trial, which both sides can retain the right to call her as a witness at any time since she's been brought up. So that's just kind of, I don't really see how you're going to live stream the trial if you're a witness in the trial. That's not how that goes. Okay, so I guess I'll just add some final rebuttal thoughts. I disagree. I do think that first-degree murder is the correct charge. First-degree murder does not need a long time of premeditation. It can be a second where someone decides, I'm going to kill this person, and they kill that person, right? Whether it's with a weapon or by whatever means. In Alexee's case, the defense is in for an extremely uphill battle. I really don't see any way around that. Is there enough reasonable doubt in the autopsy? Well, we can take other experts at their word who have said that this autopsy is going to hold up, specifically in a court TV episode where an expert in, forensics basically said that this was a strong enough autopsy. If the only doubt that someone can throw at the autopsy is, well, they didn't do a lung test, says to me that you're not addressing the rest of the information indicating suffocation in the autopsy. You're only addressing one, Hail Mary hope that can cause doubt. It's not fully disproving anything or bringing reasonable doubt into the actual findings of the autopsy itself. If you can find doubt within the findings or something inconsistent with suffocation, then that might be an argument. But just hoping that they say, well, they didn't float them, so they don't know, I think that will be inconsistent with all the other signs of life and signs of suffocation throughout baby Alex's body. From there, improper disposal of a corpse is obviously high hopes because that is assuming that the baby wasn't alive and is ignoring the evidence of the live birth of the baby, such as no decomposition, no other signs that are typically present in the autopsy of a stillborn baby, rather signs of suffocation. So with that being said, we can also look to the person tasked with proving this, which is Dr. Chris Sperry. He is a well-known forensic expert when it comes to cases that people are very hesitant to be an expert on. He results in a lot of guilty convictions. You can reference him in the Rosenbaum trial, both of them spending life in prison. So he's not only not effective, but he also is very hard to believe, in my opinion, and you can also watch that and assess for yourself. So I do not think that there is anyone strong enough who is tasked with disproving this. I also don't think that the argument, if this were to be posed actually in court, that Alexee tried to revive the child and then gave up from there, is a strong argument. It sounds like a lie. I'm just going to put it out there, okay? It reads as a lie to basically everyone because there's no rhyme or reason to it at all. If she cared about the baby enough to try and save its life, you'd care to alert others of the baby. If you can have a better argument against that than shame or guilt or panic, I would love to hear it, because I do not think those will meet the threshold to dissuade the logic behind. If you can't disprove that the baby was alive, then you try and prove that Alexee blew the air into the lungs. Oh man, I think the jury is going to be like, all right, are we good? Guilty? Guilty? Yep. Okay, we're all sign the papers. Let's get out of here. It's been a long 6 weeks. Oh my God. That's like the level of how bad that argument is, in my opinion. I'm not trying to be rude. I am trying to state facts. That is not believable. That is why I've compared Alexee's possible defenses in these ways to Charlie Adelson, the guy who said that, no, I didn't pay for the hit on my sister's ex-husband. The Latin King gang members were extorting me for minuscule amounts of money at a time with a long con, and I knew who killed my sister's husband the whole time, but I just kept paying these Latin gang members. It's a crazy thing. No, I didn't set it up. No, they don't know intimate details as to how and why they killed Dan Markel. No, that's just weird. That's the same level of like a very denial defense that I do not think will bode well for Alexee. I always appreciate someone who can like give us the opportunity for debate, right? I love debate and I love to formulate arguments, and I don't really see any good arguments coming from the defense, especially at this point. It's been said that Gary Mitchell, his argument for why she was gaining weight and took phentermine for it was because they ate McDonald's every day. Well, why didn't she just stop eating the McDonald's too? Did she keep eating the McDonald's and taking the phentermine and the stomach kept growing? Oh man, that's crazy. You'd think something's got to give in that situation. All of this stuff is gonna just pile up to the jury, and then people who don't even follow the case. I saw one attorney who watched just the hallway footage and was like, yep, that's all you need, basically. It looks so sinister. Obviously, it doesn't work that way, but this was a well-seasoned attorney who was like, nope, that's sinister. So I do think that will play a very heavy part in the jury, seeing that, why didn't you just tell anyone, right? There's no excuse for not telling anyone, and that leads you to the next step, which is like, oh, you didn't want to tell anyone. Oh, you didn't want them to know, obviously, right? Because otherwise you'd just tell someone. And so basically their defense is to hope to defy logic. I've said this before and I will say it again. I definitely think Alexee would be smart to take a guilty plea. That's not legal advice. That is just my opinion. I think that's her only hope as to getting her charges reduced and getting a lesser sentence, because I think she'll be convicted in the same amount of time as Hannah Payne and Charlie Adelson, and I think that it will be a swift verdict. Just boom, just a swift guilty verdict on both counts. I don't think there's reasonable doubt on any piece of this case whatsoever. None. That only bolsters once the judge comes back with the decision on the evidence, which if she decides to let a certain amount of these statements in, Alexee is definitely done for when it comes to the deception that the hospital staff felt was being perpetrated on them. They don't have any reason to say that in the criminal case against Alexee. They essentially have no reason to lie. Otherwise, they would have never talked to the police. Oh, wait, and who didn't do that? Alexee, right? I'm not saying that you don't have your Fifth Amendment right to silence, but I'm saying that the hospital staff doesn't seem to have anything to hide in their police interviews or anything of the like. They seem to be as forthcoming as possible, maybe had some misrememberings, but that's neither here nor there unless you apply malice to having those things misremembered. So yeah, that's why good defense attorneys will try and harp on the fact that eyewitness testimony doesn't mean anything. The only definitive eyewitness testimony that we need in this case is the people who saw the baby first, which is the housekeeper and then the CNA as well, which is also why it is unfortunate that her witness interview is not the most accurate, so to speak, right? So either way, the people who saw the baby and the state of the baby, that's pretty much the only eyewitness testimony we need. And they have no reason to lie about how they saw the baby. And it's going to be pretty well corroborated by the crime scene photos of baby Alex. So yeah, I appreciate a different point of view, but I also just think it's an interesting perspective because I don't see the logic in it. I don't see the logic in this argument. I understand trying to see it from other sides, but I just don't understand, I guess. Maybe I am too much in an echo chamber or have too much of a closed mind, but I have tried to look at it from every perspective and be like, well, why would you do this instead of that? If I was Lexi, why would I make these choices? And it always comes down to there is no rhyme or reason other than an attempt to conceal and get away with getting rid of this baby. Of course, many people who hear this case just cannot understand that until they look into the facts of neonaticide and realize that this is exactly how that goes down all the time. So again, it's just my opinion that this is what Alexee did, but I do believe that obviously neonaticide mothers kill the baby within close proximity to others, oftentimes by suffocation, are usually under the age of 25, and throughout most of the pregnancy denied or concealed it. And also denial indicates that she at one point was made aware that she was pregnant and then went into denial, right? So with all of these things, it's like, okay, even though you're in denial, that doesn't mean you never knew. That means you knew and went into denial and denied it the whole time, which subconsciously or consciously means she allegedly made a plan to get rid of this baby by any means necessary. It's my personal belief that she knew she was pregnant, because people also ask, like, well, why would you go to the hospital if you knew you're going to kill the baby? That's a valid question as far as reasonable doubt. Well, when you look into neonaticide, and like they said, they often do it right near others, which is very interesting, probably helps them get away with it, because everyone would be like, no, they were just right here. How could they have had a baby and killed it? That's crazy, right? Either way, I think that she was, this is my personal opinion, was in so much pain from labor and was probably almost fully dilated when she went into the hospital. That is why she was uncomfortable and kept trying to move around and conceal her stomach. Once she got hit with the pain medication and everything like that, it became much easier to do the actual birth. So I think she went into the bathroom and pushed and put the baby in the bag. That's what I believe. I don't think the baby just fell out. I think that's a complete lie. That's just my opinion. But I do think that she definitely knew she needed to go then, because she couldn't hold it in any longer, and also made sure that that baby came out in the bathroom, and it was much easier after being given some morphine, right? So yeah, that's just my opinion. But I think most of that is a lot more logical than thinking that she didn't know she was pregnant despite being aware of gaining weight, took phentermine, possibly, according to the people who gave interviews from her school, denied being pregnant and said that she was being fat shamed. You'd think if that is true as well, that someone would be like, oh, well, they think I'm pregnant and I am, getting fat and the phentermine's not working. Maybe I should take a pregnancy test. That also leads to consciousness of guilt, in my opinion, when it comes to Alexee's actions in the case. So you'd think that all of these, little bits and pieces that may or may not make it into trial will cause a mountain on top of Alexee. And so I'm always thankful to hear a different perspective and offer my perspective and my thoughts on what is happening in this case. I don't get to see a lot of differing perspectives necessarily in this case. She is one of very few who are, speaking out about their opinions. So none of this is to disparage or take down anything she says or anything like that. It is simply to be in the honor of the 10th man rule and debate in and of itself, right? But yeah, these are just my opinions and my perspective on the evidence we have, and the likelihood of most of that evidence also being allowed into trial. So yes, with all that being said, thank you so much if you made it this far in this video. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And I do genuinely enjoy the conversation. If you're interested in following this case to trial, please subscribe, as I'll be covering it all along the way with a legal focus. It's your girl Friday. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.